Kashimo and Ryu Ishigori, two absolute monsters and two of the strongest players in the entire culling games. Now just what would happen if a fight were to break out between the two? What if they just happened to be placed in the same colony? And that's what I'm going to be talking about today with Blzkn. Blzkn's a JJK YouTuber just like me, you should check him out, his link is in the description. He makes great stuff, and without further ado, let's get into this video.
Hajime's ability. So Hajime's cursed energy manipulation is electrified cursed energy. He's one of the strongest players in the culling games. He can turn his cursed energy into an electrical current which puts his body in a constant state of electrification. This makes Hajime's cursed energy forced physical attacks impossible to defend against, as well as giving them a shock upon impact. He also has the ability of lightning discharge. By manipulating the characteristics of his cursed energy, he can freely separate the charges of his cursed energy. He can turn them into bolts, can use them on impact, and this was evident in his different fights of using this lightning discharge. His innate technique is currently unknown, however we know that he is saving it for sooner, being something of huge danger. He also has the curse tools, the Neo stuff, which he can use in battle, as well as function as a lightning rod for accumulating charges. This was shown in his fight against Hikari and is a great offensive tool. His speed, offensive capabilities are off the charts, and he's one of the strongest Jujutsu sorcerers. He has elite hand-to-hand combat, as well as great speed, especially boosted with his properties of electricity, and he has great durability with tanking numerous abilities and punches from Hikari, as well as coming unscathed from an unblockable drumming beat. And Hajime also has an anti-domain hollow wicker basket, giving him a level of versatility against the pinnacle of Jujutsu sorcery.
And if you've been enjoying the video so far, please do be sure to subscribe, and also check out Blzkn, subscribe to his channel too. Now Ryu Ishigori is an absolute beast. He's no joke, and he's one of the strongest players of the culling game, just like Kashimo. He's someone who's able to completely outmatch and outclass Yuta in terms of hand-to-hand, and this is completely thanks to his insane output. Now you have to remember that his output was actually said to be one of the highest in all of history, and this is history that includes when Sukuna was alive. And this was also said by many sorcerers, most importantly one of those sorcerers being Kenjaku, who knew full-powered Sukuna. Now of course this doesn't mean he's that strong, he's definitely not Gojo or full-powered Sukuna level, but it goes to show that his output is no joke. Of course, in terms of speed, he has speed that not only matches Yuta hand to hand, but he can also match Yuta in terms of pace as well, as he can run around with him on the battlefield and even keep up with him. And of course, this doesn't even get into his insanely powerful curse technique, the Granite blast. Now this is a blast that not even Yuta can stop, as Yuta can deflect it, but if anyone were to take this head on, just like Yuta did with his punch, it would completely disintegrate someone, as it turned Yuta's hand into ash and dust. So of course, Yuta's skillful, he could deflect it. Though of course, the Granite blast is no joke. When Uro didn't have a sky ability, it just one-shot her, which granted there was a reason. She could have blocked in a normal situation, but it does show that if you take this head on, it will either knock you out or just kill you straight up. As Ishigori even says after the fight that his Granite blast was weakened after the domain expansion. And of course he also has a domain expansion, which we all know takes you 2 tiers up once it's complete. So for example with Dagon, with Mahito, and with all the other characters that have used their domains, excluding Megumi, though Megumi's does take him up 1 whole tier, but once you've fully mastered and refined your domain, it takes you up at least 2 tiers. So we don't even know how strong he is at his max. And he also has quite a lot of control of his Granite blast, so he's able to make it so it takes out a wide area of effect, taking out multiple building blocks, and he can also make it more narrow and shorter, which does increase its speed too. And of course he can also split it off into different blasts that can actually track and all go after their opponents. So he is fairly versatile for someone who only has one curse technique.
Hajime battled an immortal being for 15 minutes, and for the fight we can see he was powering him for the majority of the fight. We know of course Hikari was not trying to kill him, however we saw from Hajime elite level hand-to-hand combat, dangerous abilities in his lightning and things of versatility that I don't think we've seen a sorcerer have in terms of killing ability. His ability to not only use his staff, but his lightning discharge in my opinion puts him at a level that Ryu would not be able to guard against, and this is why I think Hajime wins. I believe even though his hand-to-hand combat is slightly better than Ryu in my opinion, Ryu has the damage in that regard. However, before the usage of his domain expansion, I don't think Ryu will be able to overpower Hajime in time before he accumulates one of his lightning strikes. And I believe at the time when he finally gets that lightning discharge, Ryu would end up losing at least a limb or a body part of significant damage that would then end the fight, and it would allow Hajime to win, especially with the fact that we know Ryu does not have burst curse technique. One big blow is of significant damage, and not compared to someone like a Hikari who can recover his limbs, they won't be able to do so. So even though he has this higher level of output, I don't know if he has the capability to put down Hajime in time. But what do you think in that regard?
So actually this is pretty tough. I'm a big Kashimo wanker, I'm a big Ishigori wanker, two of my favorite fighters put together. It's tough. But I do agree that the lightning could be deadly, and it even goes along the lines of if the lightning can actually take off his limbs or his arms, or even just one arm, he wouldn't be able to cast domain expansion, right?
Correct.
But then obviously comes the other side of the argument where obviously what I'm about to say is headcanony, so it depends on which side of the fence you sit on. But I actually think that the lightning strike from Kashimo, though it is probably the deadliest thing we've seen in the entire series, barring Sukuna and Gojo, those are just different animals, but excluding those two, I think that the lightning strike might just crack his bones or break his arm or something. I don't think it would rip his limbs off, and this is because of the output of Ishigori, which yes, does give him a great offense, it also does give him a great defense. And now of course there is a whole scaling with him and Yuta. He scales, I think at the very least, it's kind of crazy, he's like 3 to 5 times stronger than Yuta, maybe even 6 to 7 times in terms of defense and power. There is a whole debate to be had about that. I talk all about that in my Yuta's overrated video. I'm not going to get into that here, and please don't get into that into the comments of this video. It's not a Yuta video. But the point that I'm trying to make is, if you think like I do that the lightning wouldn't blow his limb off and just break his arm, he would be able to cast domain expansion. And then obviously even more headcanon territory, what does his domain expansion do? And is it going to be enough to kill Kashimo? And I'm going to pass this on to Blzkn.
And yeah, I think this is the biggest point. So if you believe that Ryu can survive lightning strikes, then I do believe he will beat Hajime. I think if he is ended up to survive these lightning strikes, then he only needs to tank one of them, then realize how serious of an opponent, and then unleash his granite blasters and his output in the punches to close the gap with Hajime. I believe we had a brief discussion, and I agree, Ryu's output is higher, so his punches are going to do more damage than Hajime. However, Hajime has the most dangerous ability with the lightning strike ability. I think this is an interesting part. Before we even discuss to the domain expansion, I actually do believe Ryu, even though he has that high level of output and reinforce his body, I don't think he will survive the lightning strike. And because of that, I do believe that will cause the fight to end. Like you mentioned before, he won't be able to cast his domain expansion, and even more than that, he would be in a disadvantage against somebody who can meet hand-to-hand combat. So upon losing a hand, how would you deal with a Hajime? And I believe it comes down to him eventually losing. But now let's talk about something which I think is interesting, and we can talk about his domain expansion. Now we know he has highest output, and we can assume that his domain is extremely refined, especially with his personality, is likely going to be sure kill. However, this is just an assumption. I believe it comes down to, will Hajime's hollow wicker basket be enough to stop this? And if so, then I believe that is the biggest trump card that Ryu has against him, and that is why I edge Hajime to beat Ryu. But what do you think in that regard in the domain expansion?
I think actually that's a very good point, because clearly Kashimo has some experience fighting many sorcerers with deadly domain expansions. I mean, the moment Hakari activated his domain, he was thinking about like 2 different types of domains, special time domains, loop type domains. He's clearly experienced with many domain expansions, and obviously in his era people used them a lot. So this means that not only did he survive these domain expansions, but he most likely beat his opponents. Knowing his personality, he's not going to run away from fights. So that is definitely a big edge to Kashimo, in that even if Ryu activates his domain expansion, there is the chance that Kashimo will somehow be able to survive it. Though of course simple domain isn't perfect, but it does give him a chance. So in terms of the domain expansion, it is very, very hard to debate. It does come down to what you think. So obviously I think the domain is enough to win, so that's why I actually have Ryu like 55 to 45. But if you think Kashimo, and it's fair if you think this, can actually survive the domain somehow, especially if you think he can take his arm, then Kashimo's gonna win. But one thing I actually quickly wanted to throw in there, because I know there's gonna be some comments about this, and it's about Ryu and Kashimo in terms of their hand-to-hand. So I'm gonna quickly say what I think, and then I'll throw it to Blzkn too. So the way I scale this is that Kashimo, yes, is extraordinarily fast, especially because of his properties of electricity and lightning and whatnot. But in terms of power, it just can't be compared between Ryu, Hakari, Yuta, and Kashimo. And I'm saying Ryu is above all. Now, obviously, kind of off topic, but I may as well say this now, so I don't have to say it in the comments. Yuta doesn't have a great output, nor does Hakari. Actually, both their outputs are kind of average. Well, I wouldn't say completely average. I would say maybe grade 1 level, actually, for both of them. But the reason they are both strong is because once you have so much cursed energy, you can actually reinforce your body. And Yuta, this was said by Yuji and many other characters, Yuta just has so much cursed energy that it doesn't even matter that his output is bad. He can make himself more durable, stronger, faster, many times over because of cursed energy reinforcement. And it's the same thing with Hakari. Hakari's output never changes in Jackpot. It's just he can reinforce his body more. The point that I'm trying to make is that because Ishigori's output, first of all, is just so unbelievably high, it actually scales above Hakari and Yuta, like objectively so. I think it's like many times stronger than Yuta for many reasons, but that's why I think in terms of hand-to-hand, maybe their speed matches, but I do think Kashimo wouldn't be able to do any major damage at all to him, maybe make him bleed a bit, but a punch from Ryu is going to hurt if that hits Kashimo. So what do you think actually in terms of hand-to-hand? How do you scale Ryu and Kashimo?
So I agree with a lot of what you said. I think in terms of the destructive capabilities in the hand-to-hand combat, Ryu has the edge. However, I think Hajime is the smarter fighter, and in terms of elite knowledge, I believe he'll be able to counteract him, and he's just a better in terms of martial arts. However, let's not sleep on Ryu. I think he's elite in that regard, and I only edge Hajime in terms of hand-to-hand combat because I think he's intelligent and will be able to deflect his blows. But like you said, the comparison in terms of the hits Hajime can get compared to the hits Ryu can get are completely different. I believe Hajime can only tank maybe 2 to 3 of his full-powered hits before he's in very significant damage or potentially dead himself. Compared to the hand-to-hand combat, even though he has the electrical reinforcement, the stunning properties won't affect because we know Ryu has a lot of curse energy, meaning he won't be stunned from certain attacks. Therefore, even his edge in terms of his electrical properties, in the hand-to-hand combat, he would not necessarily overpower Ryu in that regard, and it would be more of him being in trouble until he can discharge his lightning abilities. So I agree with that regard. However, if they were in a taijutsu battle, I do believe Hajime will come out top. I believe his hand-to-hand combat at this moment in time is probably the best we've seen in the series, and I believe he will use his intelligence to manage to counter and eventually get to the point where he can use his lightning discharge before taking too many big blows. You see, even in the part where Hikari himself, who's been deemed to be a very good at hand-to-hand combat, was completely overpowered for a lot of the periods in terms of their 1v1 in hand. So I think Hajime, in my opinion, just being the best person we've seen in martial arts, I believe he'll just have slightly enough to edge the deficiency in power output.
And actually, I'm going to say something that kind of actually goes in Kashimo's favor. So to those who think base Yuta, so obviously about Rika, just his normal state, actually scales in terms of hand-to-hand or power with, let's say, Udo or Ishigori and Kashimo, which I think it doesn't, then if you think Yuta and Kashimo are very close or even in terms of hand-to-hand, then objectively 1 or 2 punches, maybe even just 3 or 2, would just knock out or heavily injure Kashimo. Because remember, Kashimo doesn't have reverse curse technique. But I will say, in defense of Hajime, I think in terms of his base compared to Yuta's, I think it's actually a whole tier higher, maybe even 2. It's kind of crazy. Don't get me wrong, Yuta is stronger than Kashimo, but base to base is something else. So if you do think he's stronger, which I think me and Blzkn can both agree on, Kashimo is very, very durable. One of the most durable characters in the whole series. Great stamina, he can endure a lot as well. So it wouldn't be an instant KO, but there is the detriment that, I guess in both cases, that neither of them have reverse curse technique. So let's say one of Ryu's Granite blasts really fucks up, let's say, Kashimo's arm, or maybe even blows it off, who knows. Or it damages him heavily, he's not going to be able to heal from that. So yeah, it kind of goes both ways. Neither of them having reverse curse technique. It's going to be a quick fight.
And now conclusion. So in my opinion, Hajime wins 65 out of the 35 times if they were to fight 100 times. I just believe it's very situational to win in terms of what does his domain expansion do. And I don't believe with obviously him not having reverse curse technique that he can tank these abilities of the lightning discharge. From what we've seen in Hajime, he can get these abilities very quickly, and because of that and the way he seems to be good and adept in manipulating his curse energy, I believe he can make sure to pace himself and have enough times to have a go at Ryu. So even if we were to headcanon and say that he survives the first electrical strike, we know he just then needs to wait till he gets another one and then the fight is over. And from what we've seen in terms of his durability, to be able to outlast matches, to be able to preserve his curse energy and use it for when he wants, and what we can see, he has one of the best curse energy control, being able to output it all in one attack at the end. I believe his level of Jujutsu knowledge with his hand-to-hand combat, with his curse energy reserve and his ability of lightning will be just enough to overpower Ryu, even though Ryu is an extremely strong combatant.
And yeah, that's a great conclusion. It's very fair. It all really just comes down to, do you agree with Blzkn or me? Do you think the lightning could rip his arm off, or do you think it's just gonna crack a bone or two? Because it really depends on just that, because these are both very, very skilled fighters. They're very strong. Funny enough, they both lived in the same era, but unfortunately, Kashimo was actually in his final years and dying, just as Ryu was making a name for himself, and he was very, very young, and he's entering his prime. If they had just been born, let's say, like a couple decades earlier or later, then this could have actually been a fight in the actual series back in the day. But yeah, it just comes down to if you think the lightning can actually take his arm. So obviously, I think, just in my headcanon, that his output's enough to survive, so that's why I have Ryu taking it 55 to 45. Obviously, then with his output being higher, helps with hand-to-hand, the Granite blast, domain, there's many, many reasons into this, as we fully discussed in the whole video. But yeah, you know what I think, you know what Blzkn thinks, but what do you think? Who do you think's winning this and why? Let us know in the comments down below.
Yes, sir.
And that is the video. Thank you guys very much for watching. If you have any other suggestions for what if battles, please do in the comments below. Next time, we're going to be talking about Teen Gojo versus Yuta. Was Yuta and Sendai, so that's going to be interesting. And of course, check out Blzkn's channel too. So we're actually covering Hajime Kashimo versus Prime Ghetto from the JJK Zero movie. So if you want to see that, check out his channel. And of course, he has a ton of JJK content. Check him out. And yeah, thank you very much for watching. Again, subscribe to join the Higuruma fan club.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, join the fan club. And yeah, that's all. Thank you for watching and take care.
I still think he's the best character they've introduced.
Facts. I'm leaving that in. That's facts. I'm leaving that in.
Yeah.
All right, bye.